The Obama administration's war on leaks.
I would say the average whistleblower ends up losing his job.
For me to still be employed there, I think everyone is surprised by.
He first blew the whistle on the case known as Fast and Furious in a CBS News report in 2011.
You were intentionally letting guns go to Mexico.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the agency was.
All right, folks. So welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Cheryl Atkinson with the report on CBS News, an interview on CBS this morning with our next guest. I'm very honored to say that we are joined right now by John Dodson. He is the ATF agent, still on the job, and he's the author of The Unarmed Truth, My Fight to Blow the Whistle and Expose Fast and Furious, the story the ATF doesn't want you to know. I hold that up here in my hand for those of you watching at Newsmax TV. And, John, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, no. It's I feel like I should be calling you, sir. You could just please call me Steve. You mentioned this came up a little bit. So you're still employed. You still have that title. You're still on the job.
Well, that's correct, yes, sir. On the job, however, is debatable. My career has been in a certain state of flux, since having blown the whistle.
Right, reassigned, but not fired.
Correct, yes, sir.
And why do you believe that is?
I have to give credit to staffers from Senator Grassley's office and Chairman Ice's office. And, they helped me a lot from the very beginning in all of this and provided me air cover when I needed it. And I think, and ultimately in a bigger aspect, it was such an atrocious program. It was so, misguided and idiotic. I think maybe even they can have a hard time justifying or finding a reason to be able to terminate me over, bringing to light the faults with the program.
All right, now let's talk about the program. And there's a court battle over documents and that the president's withholding under executive privilege. Of course, the Attorney General, I don't even know if it's directly related to Fast and Furious, but he already is, was held in contempt by the Congress, and he went to court to try to fight that, and the court ruled against him. So, first of all, let's jump ahead. Are we ever going to get to the truth? Are we ever going to know who was responsible? Why they did it? Will anyone ever be held accountable in the highest levels of government for this, do you think?
Well, I certainly hope so, sir. And that's part of the reason behind writing the book, is to make people realize that, okay, yeah, it's over or it's been out of the news and you haven't heard about it, but that doesn't mean it's over. Those questions have never been answered. Those unresolved issues are still out there. And to make people aware, say, look, this is it. This is what happened. And because there's so many sources of information here and there and everywhere, but to try to put it all together in, a minute and 30-second news clip from this agency or that one is very hard to do. So hopefully the book will make people read it or people will read it and say, you know what? Yeah, there are a lot of questions, and this still doesn't make sense. Like nobody's ever explained where this started from, who thought this was a good idea, and how no one's been held accountable for it.
All right, and let's talk a little bit about you. You were at the Pentagon on 9/11 after the attack. You also were in 07 the Virginia Tech massacre. You were involved there in the aftermath of it, and then of course came your experience with Fast and Furious. And for the off chance that people are watching and listening and aren't all that familiar with Fast and Furious, we do have a little time here without going too detailed. Talk about what it is and talk about what you would like, the answers that you would like, and how you address them in the book.
Sure. Well, to give you the background, Fast and Furious was an investigation that was working out of the ATF Phoenix office. I was transferred out to Phoenix in December of 2009, and shortly thereafter, the flaws in the strategy became obvious to me. And the first time we were out in the field, and essentially what we were doing was we were facilitating the illegal trafficking of firearms from licensed gun dealers, FFLs, federal firearms licensees, to known straw purchasers. We knew that these straw purchasers are someone who purchases a firearm not for themselves, for the intent of delivering it to someone else for trafficking. We knew that these straw purchasers were buying these firearms, 15, 20, 25 AK variants or FN57 pistols a day from the same dealer. And we knew that these weapons were going to be trafficked nearly immediately to, some of the most violent criminal organizations that, this part of the world has ever seen. And yet we did nothing to stop it. And that's where, the term gun walking comes into play. And, when it should have been and could have been in law enforcement custody and wasn't. So I was told from the very beginning that the mission behind this, the goal is to take down a cartel, to get that bigger fish, to go after the bosses. And immediately I questioned how we could get there. Like, how, by doing what we're doing, I saw no way how we can actually achieve the goal that was stated. So once these individuals would purchase these firearms, we would log it and take note, and they would head south, and it would be sometimes as early as 2 or 3 days later when they were recovered in a crime scene on both sides of the border, sometimes violent crime. And they used that as a somehow justifying their actions, that they knew that they were onto a cartel, but you can't make a case on anyone like that. And not only that, how much of this violence are we ultimately responsible for if we're the ones that have facilitated the firearms trafficking and essentially opened the floodgates to fill the border region with all these firearms?
Now, these great questions. We're talking to John Dodson here on the Steve Malzberg Show. The book, The Unarmed Truth, My Fight to Blow the Whistle and Expose Fast and Furious. Talk about what led you to do just that. What motivated you to do it? You didn't know what the future would hold after you did it. You didn't know, what the wrath of the government would be upon you after you blew the whistle. You didn't know that you'd get, you might have anticipated, or maybe you did in advance. I don't know. You tell me. The Senator Grassley and Darrell Issa, who, by the way, have written the foreword to your book. So what what was it like, the decision-making process?
Well, it was, it's kind of an evolution. I had started, arguing against the strategy with my superiors and up my chain of command, and had gotten nowhere, and had gotten beaten down and beat up quite a bit for doing so. And after Agent Brian Terry, a Border Patrol agent, was killed on December 10th, in December 2010, and initially, it's such a hard thing, because in May of that very same year, I had told them, or I had asked them, are you prepared to go to a Border Patrol agent's funeral over this? Because it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's only when. And then to have that come true, 7 months later, and realize that it's still going on. They still are, they still think that they're justified in what they're doing. And then I noticed that they were trying to distance themselves. They were trying to sever that connection between Fast and Furious and Agent Terry's death. And so it pushed me over the line. Like I say, I had used every aspect in my chain of command that I knew of at the time, up until that point, and gotten nowhere. But when I saw them trying to cover it up, trying to hide it, that's when I went outside the agency, because that's not what we're supposed to be about. That's not who we are, as law enforcement.
Let me ask you this, John. We heard a lot at the time from the Democrats that this was a program that was started under the Bush administration. Now, is that true, or is this an extension and a revving up of a program that was started, or is this the same program? Can you clarify that?
Sure, I can give you what I know about that, but I have to preface it with the fact that what you're referring to is a case called Wide Receiver, which was also worked out of the Phoenix office, more specifically Tucson, Arizona, back in 2009. That happened prior to my arrival. So what I know about it, I know from the subsequent OIG report that came out, and from a couple agents that had worked on the case in the area.
Right.
And this is the one that they call under the Bush administration, saying that this is where the program happened there. The differences in the two cases are significant. In Wide Receiver, there is an attempt to interdict the weapons. Like, the plan is, let the purchases occur from the gun dealers, and then take the weapons off either before they get to the border, or on at least one instance that I know of, having Mexican authorities do it south of the border. So, the two of the main differences in the cases are, and the first one is paramount, is that there's an objective to try and recover the firearms, not just turn your back on them and let them be trafficked.
Right.
And the second prong of that is that the Mexicans or their officials and police and law enforcement were actually involved in part of the case, or notified of it.
John, what would you like to see? I mean, if you could, if you had your druthers, I mean, what would you tell Barack Obama about the documents? So what do you think are contained in the documents that if they ever are forced to be released, because he's not going to do it voluntarily, what do you think we will find?
I don't know. It kind of runs the gambit from everything of, orchestrating the cover up to being able to finally, pin accountability onto someone. And I think what's important is, this is the only scandal of all the other ones that this executive privilege has been invoked. And when you do that, there's only one office in the land that has such a privilege, and that's the White House itself. So when I first went outside of ATF and went to Grassley's office, and Senator Grassley wrote letters to our then acting director, and DOJ responded to those letters rather than ATF. Like, that ratcheted things up a notch, a lot further than I thought they would be. And that immediately brings in DOJ proper as well as the Attorney General. Then executive privilege comes in after Attorney General Holder is found in contempt of Congress, still won't turn the documents over. Well, that brings the White House in. So what is in those documents, I think, is anyone's guess. What I would say if I had a voice with the president right now, I'd say, if there's nothing in there, sir, turn them over. I mean, if there's nothing in there and you and your people haven't done anything wrong, turn them over. I mean, it's not that hard.
That makes absolute sense. So let me ask this question: do you believe that the president knew about this or was involved in a cover-up, and that Eric Holder, who has given conflicting testimony, to the best of my recollection, I hate to sound like him, but to the best of my recollection, gave conflicting testimony, had to change some testimony from when he found out and what he knew and when he knew it. Do you believe that either or both of them knew about this all along and or were involved in a cover-up?
Well, sir, I can tell you this. I agree with you. The General did give conflicting testimony on a couple of occasions. I can tell you that I witnessed firsthand the attempts at a cover-up. The retaliation against the whistleblowers, not only myself, but there was a lot of, several other agents that stood up as well, not as high profile as I did, but, they put just as much on the line, had as much skin in the game as I did. And for them to not turn these documents over, it's prima facie, on its face, by exerting that executive privilege, what you're saying is the White House was in communications with the Attorney General about either the investigation, the gun walking aspect of it, or about the cover-up itself. I mean, there's no other way to avoid that.
We got less than a minute, not fair, but what was the most serious form of intimidation that you suffered?
Well, I think when they tried to have me prosecuted, and I was fearful that, they would perhaps try to execute a warrant on my house, and I would resist, unquote, and, end up a statistic.
But you would do it all again, correct?
Oh, yes, sir. I feel I didn't have a choice. I did what was expected of me to do as a law enforcement officer under my oath, to protect this country and to report waste, fraud, and abuse. I never saw it as a choice.
Well, we should also point out that you proudly served in the military before this career began, and it's an honor to speak to you, and good luck with the book, The Unarmed Truth, My Fight to Blow the Whistle and Expose Fast and Furious by John Dodson, and I hope you'll come back one day, sir. Good luck.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, folks, there you go. One final segment left in this hour. We'll come back on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax.